We have talked about this a bit. There was a new report in the New York Times that claimed that Jeb Bush and Christie's campaigns were sort of unofficially teaming up to try to put a dent into surging Marco Rubio's numbers. Both have launched scathing attacks on the Florida senator in the recent days that sound somewhat similar. And here's the nature of that argument.
I also have a proven record as governor of the state of Florida that disrupted the old order and brought about change, applying conservative principles. And that's the story I tell here, and it's garnering quite a bit of support here in New Hampshire, where people really force the candidates to have full views. They're not scripted. They don't let you get away with scripted kind of responses.
We know who the boy in the bubble is up here, who never answers your questions, who's constantly scripted and controlled because he can't answer your questions. So when Senator Rubio gets here, when the boy in the bubble gets here, I hope you guys ask him some questions, because it's time for him to start answering questions.
So the New York Times story, which you heard a moment ago, Christie called baloney, claims that both of the aides for the campaigns have been exchanging news articles on Rubio's potential vulnerabilities. Both Jeb Bush and Christie denied the Times report. Joining me now is former New Hampshire Senator Judd Gregg. He's also the former governor of the state of New Hampshire. Nobody knows the state better than Mr. Gregg, and he joins us now. He's a Jeb Bush supporter. Senator, welcome.
Thanks,
good morning.
Thank you,
Good to see you this morning. What do you make of this whole thing? And, you know, in a sense, why wouldn't they be going after Marco Rubio? He looks like he might be in second place right now.
Well, I don't make much of it. You know, the New York Times commentary, I think, is probably a story made for so that they would have a story. You know, to use the Christie vernacular, it would be stupid if they were doing that, and I don't think they are. I was with Jeb Bush last night. Your clip that you just played certainly wasn't of that ilk. And last night he spent the whole evening with a very large crowd in Derry, New Hampshire, talking about issues and why he'd be a very strong president, which I think he would be. Obviously, Rubio got a bump out of Iowa, but I think here in New Hampshire you're seeing some other folks coming up very fast, and one of them is Jeb Bush.
All right, so, you know, in Iowa, we saw the Rubio surprise. So everybody's wondering now if in New Hampshire we're going to see perhaps a Jeb Bush surprise or a Christie surprise or a Kasich. I know you'd like it to be a Jeb Bush surprise. You know this state very well. What is the dynamic on the ground? Do the Bush people have a ground game there to pull off a surprise for real?
Yeah, yes, but more importantly, the dynamics of New Hampshire are totally different than Iowa. As you know, Iowa marginalizes itself because it's a caucus state where small groups of motivated people can make a huge difference, such as evangelicals. That's not going to happen in New Hampshire. New Hampshire is almost a general election because we allow independents to vote on either side. And in fact, in the Republican primary, I wouldn't be surprised if 35 to 40% of the vote was independents. And these independents used to be Republicans, most of them, and they're largely educated women who left the party because of the harshness of the National Party. But when they come back in on the primary, they're not going to vote for Trump. And so I think Trump's in trouble here. I don't think these numbers that say Trump's up by 2 to 1 are right. I think he's got a ceiling of about 25%. That means 75% of the folks in the state aren't going to vote for him. And if they coalesce around one candidate or two candidates, and I think they will, then I think Trump could be in a real race here.
Very interesting. You know, we've seen the emergence of the Bush family in New Hampshire, and we expect that we'll see more of that in South Carolina. I spoke with a reporter from the Monitor a little while ago who seemed to feel that there's a big push for someone new, a new fresh face, whether it's Donald Trump or whether it's Marco Rubio, that's the focus of people in New Hampshire. You disagree?
I think people are frustrated with Washington, and they want somebody who can lead us out of this frustration. They're frustrated because they're concerned about their national security, they're concerned about their jobs, they're concerned about their kids' future. And I think the person who best addresses those themes, whether he or she is new or whether he or she is somebody who's actually governed, will be the person who gets the votes. And I do think having an experience of governing is very important, because you're not going to solve these problems by shouting from the corner. You've got to get in the middle of the ring and do something.
Well, let me ask you this. You know, the nature of the people that, you know, that seem to garner attention in political races over the past couple of cycles has changed so dramatically. I mean, you look at the history of this country, you look at Eisenhower, you look at, you know, you can go all the way back to George Washington, people who had military background, people who had a tremendous amount of experience before they ever got to the point in their lives where they thought that they might, you know, be able to take on the top job. Why do you think it is in this country that there is so much focus now on, you know, sort of who can ignite good, you know, sort of media and attention and all of that?
Well, I think we've got a very short time frame reference here in this country, and a lot of it is driven by social media, of course, where you don't really have any testing of people. You just have people saying whatever they think, and then even their views aren't even tested. So you have a different dynamic right now as to how people are evaluated. But in the end, it's pretty obvious. If you don't elect people who know how to govern, who are willing to put forward substantive ideas on difficult issues, you're not going to get good governance. And that's just simply the way it is. And I like to think that New Hampshire recognizes that. My sense is the people in New Hampshire do recognize that. I think they're looking for three things in a Republican candidate. One, can they win? Two, are they substantive on the issues, and do they have good ideas on the issues of especially national security and economic growth? And three, can they govern, and have they shown they can govern? I think those are the tests for most people up here for who they choose.
But what do you think Jeb Bush has to do in New Hampshire to keep going?
Exactly what he's doing. He's doing an innumerable number of town halls. I can't believe the pace he keeps. And he does extremely well in these town halls, answering every question from everybody who wants to ask a question. And he presents a very thoughtful and, I think, effective leadership style. And my view is he's getting traction. I also have to admit that there are some other folks in this race who are doing well in town halls, and they may be getting traction. So I'm not sure who the finalist is across the finish line, but I think we're going to have a surprise. The one thing predictable about New Hampshire is it is unpredictable, and I think you're going to see some surprises up here. I hope it'll be Jeb.
Yeah, we look forward to it. We're looking forward to getting up there, and we'll see you there. Thank you very much,
Thank
Senator.
You. Thank you, Martha.